Live.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So welcome everybody to this meeting of the Combined Authority. As usual, these days you see lots of faces in front of you, some of whom are officers and some of whom are councillors with decision-making responsibility, and some of whom are members of the Combined Authority who are not politicians, but do nevertheless have a vote and a presence on that committee. So I'll just go through the people who are present, and when your name is read, for the purposes of the public, can you please just put your hand up like that so people can see who you are? So we have Councillor Judith Blake, Leader of Leeds. Thank you. We have Councillor David Hall, who is Leader of the Opposition in Kirklees. Thank you. Councillor Susan Hinchcliffe, that's me. I'm Leader of Bradford and Chair of the Combined Authority. Councillor Denise Jeffrey, Leader of Wakefield. Thank you, Denise. And then we have Roger Marsh, who is Chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership, Leeds City Region. We have Councillor Shabir Pandor, who is Leader of Kirklees Council.
Morning.
Morning. We have Councillor John Pennington, who is Leader of the Opposition in Bradford, with a very attractive picture behind him. And we have Councillor Tim Swift, who is Leader of Calderdale. Where's Tim gone?
Morning.
Oh, there he is, lovely. And Councillor Keith Aspen, who is Leader of York Council. Thank you very much. Oh, and I believe we just have Councillor Galton, who is balancing opposition member in Leeds, who has just joined the meeting. I can see his words, but I can't actually see his face yet. Can you hear us, Councillor Galton? He's obviously coming in anyway. Also, as guests, we have Councillor Kim Groves, who is Chair of the Transport Committee. Councillor Harrand will be joining us at another later point in the meeting. He is Chair of Overview and Scrutiny. So with that, we have quite a number of items to get through on the agenda. First of all, let's start the meeting by doing apologies for absence. Any apologies for absence?
I've not received any.
Thank you. Well, we had a good roll call there this morning, haven't we? So everyone's there now, I believe. Declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests. Can you indicate if you have any disclosable pecuniary interests? I'm not seeing anybody indicating. Lovely. Exclusion of the press and public. Have we any items on the agenda that require that today? I don't think we have we?
No.
Lovely.
No.
We won't be exercising that in that case. Minutes of the meeting of the Combined Authority held on 16th of April 2020. Have anybody, obviously those have been circulated, does anybody have any comments or questions on those? No, and I see that Councillor Harrand has joined us. Welcome, Councillor Harrand. So for decision, first of all, obviously we have a COVID-19 response and economic recovery paper. This has been something that has completely absorbed all our lives since we went into lockdown at the end of March. It is a huge issue. It has affected everything we do as local authorities and as a combined authority. There's a huge effort going on also to support communities. Obviously, from a local authority point of view, people have died in our communities and our condolences are with those families. At the same time, we're looking now about how we move forward from this situation and live with COVID. This has impacts obviously on the economy. And Brian Archer, who is the head of our economic development team, is going to talk to us today about the work that WYCA have been doing, West Yorkshire Combined Authority have been doing to support businesses, because obviously we hear and know of businesses that are struggling now, having closed now for several weeks, and are really in financial difficulty, and that is somewhere where we need to support, and also looking ahead to how we manage the economy and how we stimulate the economy coming out of this national crisis. So Brian, I'm going to hand over to you to present the paper, if that's okay.
That's fine, thank you, Chair. The economic impact is, huge for our region. I sat on a call with the Bank of England last week, and the forecast for unemployment is 10%, a 10% fall in unemployment and a 14% drop in GDP. And we've already seen from the unemployment statistics that were out this week just in the Leeds City region, 108,000 jobless claims. And we've also got 387,000 workers on furlough in the Leeds City region. So clearly we've got some real concerns about those furloughed people and huge increase in unemployment. And this week we've launched Reboot, which is a digital skills program, which is free to furloughed workers. We've also scaled up the Skills Hub to support workers that are threatened with redundancy. The government's also launched a training provider support fund, because obviously we need to make sure that the supply of training providers and the skills support that's available continues. Members will be aware that the government launched the grant scheme, the civil grant scheme, and the bounce back loans. The banks are forecast to lend £55 billion this year, huge amounts of debt, and it's absolutely crucial that we continue to see that amount of funding flowing into the business community to avert the risk of any increase in job losses. So, significant challenges. We are seeing more money flowing through to businesses. Access to finance is key. I think £21 billion worth of bounce back loans were issued over the last 2 months. And at a local level, our business growth teams have been working with the local authorities to get grant support through to businesses. Just over 400 million in grants has been issued to city region businesses, which is a fantastic achievement. We've also been involved in supporting the PPE effort, providing business information, business advice, and specialist consultancy. We've had a great response from local businesses to providing mentoring support. Over 60 mentors have signed up to provide support to small and medium-sized businesses, which has been fantastic. We've also launched a range of products and services that can be delivered online, webinars covering topics such as mental health support and surviving through the crisis. So at the moment, and we've ring-fenced a £3 million capital grant scheme to support businesses affected by COVID, and that provides capital grant support for businesses that might want to diversify into producing PPE or any other plant and equipment to sustain their business. We're refreshing the portfolio of services because there's the urgent and important stuff that we need to deliver right now, and then clearly we need to think about the support that businesses are going to need as we go into recovery. So that's essentially what we're doing at the moment. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Just want to see if there's anybody indicating. Not at the moment. Oh, sorry, Councillor Pennington.
Yeah, I just concerned still, as many are, about the economic recovery of our care homes. Can you tell us if there's been any progress on that? I know it's a short lead in time, but something needs to be done desperately.
Brian?
Yeah, I mean, obviously some sectors are affected more than others. I think the most urgent and immediate crisis for the care home sector has been the lack of PPE. We've done a lot of work with local businesses to improve the supply of PPE. I know the NHS nationally have now issued a letter to NHS trusts with a list of 16 items that can only be procured centrally. At a local level, we're working with the Yorkshire Purchasing Organisation and others to support the supply of PPE into the care sector. Obviously, all sectors are adversely affected by the economic downturn, some more than others. And as part of the recovery planning, we need to obviously focus on some of those key sectors that are most affected and look at what we can do to support them.
Yeah, obviously, right. The care sector has some unique challenges at the moment, John. I think you're aware as a local member about the money that government has put through to support care homes. Obviously, they can't recruit new people into care homes at the moment. Therefore, their business model, their financial model doesn't work as well as it did before. And I think there's some temporary support going in from government, which has been channeled through local authorities. But naturally, as you say, going forward, there is a challenge for the whole sector there.
Empty beds are the main problem. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
And that is some Councillor Blake, I'm seeing indicating.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. And can I take this opportunity to thank everyone for the incredible work that you're doing? It's one of the toughest times. It is the toughest time that any of us have faced, to be quite honest. And the picture that Brian outlined there is very stark indeed, but it's very helpful to have that put before us, and so that we understand the extent of the challenges that are facing us. I just want to reference the work that Welcome to Yorkshire are doing, obviously a key partner of ours. And I think James Mason has done an incredible job nationally of raising the concerns around the tourism industry, which of course affects us all, but whatever, wherever we are, whether we're in the smallest rural community or we're in our larger cities, it's a massive contributor to our economy. And there are real concerns right across the hospitality sector about very small companies' ability to get through this. So I hope we're keeping an eye on that. The other aspect of course, is that we've worked very hard to get culture at the centre of our economic strategy, and just listening to theatre companies, dance across the range, the very real prospect of not being able to have audience events for many months, and the impact that is having. I hope that we can join other areas around the country in continuing to lobby governments about the culture sector and its important contribution, so that they're not left out, and that there's a real recognition of the financial contribution they make, but also, and I think this is really important, I think will become of increasing importance, their contribution to the well-being of people in our communities. And I think, as well as the economic factors that we're facing, we have to be mindful of the impact on our other services around mental health, and what is the impact going to be for the number of jobless that we're seeing, and our ability to keep supporting them. So there's a huge this is a huge agenda, and I recognise we can only touch on small aspects of it, but I think we have an enormous role to play, and really pleased that we're moving forward.
Absolutely, thank you, Councillor Blake. So, I mean, just those first two items of contribution there: care homes, theatres, culture. We've also got a piece on transport in this paper. It just shows, doesn't it, how wide-reaching this is. It actually affects every single part of our lives and our economy, and therefore we need to make sure that we are sighted on all that and addressing all those concerns as we go forward. Thinking of transport, yes, Brian, I'll bring you in shortly, but I just want to go to the transport paragraph. Did Councillor Groves want to speak on the bus challenges that are outlaid in the paper? Or Dave Pearson, or Councillor Blake?
Shall I start? And I think Dave will want to come in as well, because there's enormous, and just to thank all the team at WICA for the enormous amount of work that they're doing in the background. It's been relentless. So the bus situation, we're hoping to send an update out next week on the different operators are just doing their risk assessments on PPE. It's looking like there'll be about 20 people per bus. We will not have the capacity in terms of vehicles to cope with demand as people go back to work mid-June and July. There's a situation on both rail and bus as they start to bring those people back from furlough, that there will be some of their staff will be in the shielded group. So again, that will present problems in terms of running the system. I think we're waiting for the announcement. I know Councillor Blake's going on a call today around the funding. I'm really concerned about the funding and the mechanisms that government are using. There's no public scrutiny on it. We're supporting with public money, we're supporting the bus operators, but we don't have a clear picture of what that money is paying for. And if that type of funding mechanism continues, then there's two things. A, we need to call that into account, we need to hold that to account from a public point of view. B, it does leave us not able to use possibly the smaller operators and the coach industry that we would need for school services, that we would need for the rural areas, because we are anticipating that as demand grows and only 20 people per bus, that with the bus operators will have to duplicate those services down those arterial routes to make sure that we get key workers to the places. So we're really dependent on having funding for that backup on the situation. Our team have been working at all the bus stations and working with operators to make sure that we've got all the measures in place. I think in terms of managing that, we're putting some guidelines out on that again, which will come to you all next week. I'm just going to go to rail quickly. We had a meeting with rail operators yesterday who face the same challenges in numbers of people that they can carry. They've got their PPE into place. There's a big debate in the industry in terms of whether face covering and face masks should be actually confirmed, but it's quite loose. No one's actually confirming that. They're just saying, you know, it's up to the public to take that responsibility. The rail operators again face the same problem as the bus operators in terms of they have shielded staff, but they have not been able to continue any of their training. And the training was really important because of all the new stock that was coming into the system. So again, they will be running under capacity. On active travel, I'll just cover on active travel because we will be reliant on promoting active travel to leave the room on the other modes of transport for people to use who haven't got any mode like car and cannot cycle or walk. So there's been an enormous amount of work going on at the Combined Authority and trying to really bring forward those schemes that actually could be introduced temporary to make cycling and walking possible for people who live nearest the towns and the centres. So we're looking at on the active travel, the safety environments with all the districts, behaviour change, the funding. The allocated funding hasn't come down from government that was announced a couple of weeks ago. So actually we're not in receipt of that. We're looking how we can change the infrastructure of the highways and reallocation of road space. And there's a lot of excellent schemes coming forward, and we will share best practice as districts feed in. So I'll just hand over to Dave.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. I think we've got an item later on active travel, so I might bring you back in on that actually, if that's okay with you. First of all, actually, John Pennington, Councillor Pennington was indicating. Councillor Pennington, do you want to ask your question before I bring in Dave Pearson?
Yeah, thank you for that. Kim, you've outlined the problems with the rural bus services, which I can fully understand. But I just need to underline it for you because in our area, we've got, I think it's the K17 and the K19, both of which haven't been running for a very, very long time. And we are surrounded in a rural area with very elderly people quite often, and it's their only method of getting out. So I fully understand that you might not be able to reinstate the buses to the original timetable or even half of it. But even, you know, a couple of buses each way, each day, would be a big help. So if I could just put that seed into your mind, I'm sure you're quite aware.
Yeah.
Try and do something for the people that need that service. It's only right that I mention it.
So Councillor Pennington, I think there's a real issue with buses, which Councillor Groves outlined, and I'll go to Councillor Blake after I've gone to Dave Pearson about that particular service. But there's a real issue that governments are not paying attention to how buses are funded at this time. and are giving the money to operators rather than to combined authority. And I think that is a real concern for us to just acknowledge in this meeting. Therefore, we don't have the control over the bus network as we should have. Dave Pearson, do you want to just come back? Obviously, there's a specific service mentioned there by Councillor Pennington.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Gross has obviously identified all the current difficulties and stresses that are in the transport network and the bus system in particular regarding the current situation. We're expecting an announcement from government in the next couple of days in terms of a short-term funding package for buses, but as the Chair said, it doesn't really look long-term, and it doesn't really allow for the level of local accountability and management that is needed to actually enable the bus service to recover from the current situation. With regards to the K17 and K19 that the Councillor Pennington refers to, those services are funded by the Combined Authority, and one of the things which we did to shrink the network down to simply providing the core services for key workers is we did reduce some of the services which were operating so that we could maintain the resilience in the system in terms of drivers in particular, to be able to provide services for key workers. As is indicated in the paper, there's another stage of restoring services which we're about to go ahead with, and we've already started discussing bringing back some of the rural services that the Combined Authority pays for so that we can address some of the issues that Councillor Pennington raises. So we'll get back directly with regard to the K17 and K19, but it is something that's very much a feature of the next stage of restoring bus services. Thank you, Chair.
Well, Dave, you'll like this one, because I actually have a response somewhere from Transdev, who quite clearly are blaming the Combined Authority for withdrawing their service or instructing them to withdraw the service. So I think you need to be putting somebody on the naughty step.
So Councillor Pennington, I think, can we just not just discuss that particular, because obviously we obviously lots of different services that we could all discuss. So Dave Pearson, could you take that offline with Councillor Pennington and make sure that conundrum is solved, please?
We will do.
Those people in Keighley do need a proper bus service. Councillor Blake.
Yes, I'll try and be brief, Chair. I think Councillor Groves has given us a very full update on what's happening on the ground. I think for us, there's obviously a major concern about future viability of public transport across the piece. I think that it's really evident that the public haven't got confidence at the moment to go back onto using public transport. We need some serious answers from government about PPE and whether, I think the public would like an announcement on the issue of masks, for example, and obviously that's a debatable point, but we need some clarity from government, and I'm afraid too often in these areas we don't have that clarity, and that is leading to a real sense of disquiet. And what we are seeing as a result, obviously a direct response to the Prime Minister's statement in terms of people using their private cars when they can. I think we're all fearful that we will see an upsurge in the use of private cars again, and there's evidence coming forward that more people are looking to buy cars as a result of their lack of confidence in public transport. Obviously that has huge implications for us on all of the work we're doing on climate emergency. We saw it during the height of lockdown, the impact on the reduction of emissions and all of the work that's been done around that. But of course, the bottom line is that this is having a major impact on the business modelling from the bus companies and rail operators as well. My concern is that the noise, if you like, and governments are obviously responding to a lot of demands at the moment, is intense around subsidy for the tram networks in other cities. Obviously, we've seen the bailout in London, which was, obviously there were factors involved in that in terms of reduction in concessions, increasing congestion charge. But, again, we're seeing, a huge amount of money going into the capital, and we need to really fight our corner to make sure that we get the investment that we need for our areas. So I think, and I've made this point very clear to ministers, they've missed a trick. I think always, if you're putting more public money into private companies, you need to increase the level of accountability and scrutiny, and that, I'm afraid, has not been part of the package. We'll continue to make that case. We've at Transport for the North level, we know that the bus companies' reluctance to share data with us across the North has led to our inability to bring in a smart ticketing system, for example. And I think, I don't know, Dave will correct me, but the last figure I saw was, for the cost to the Combined Authority of our support to buses is running at over £12 million. So every time I speak to Baroness Vera, I make the point that she needs to work with us to really fully compensate the work that we're doing, so that we have a sustainable footing to make sure that we can keep public transport running across the whole of the Combined Authority area. This is tough stuff, and we need to make sure that we're on it. And the advice that I've been given is just to keep relentlessly putting our case forward and repeating it. It's a very crowded area out there in terms of demands, but we've got a very real case, and government needs to listen to what we're saying. Otherwise, the return to work and all of the things we're trying to do are going to be increasingly difficult.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Dave, did you want to just come in with the numbers there? Obviously, it's 12 million gap, isn't there, in our budget at the moment? But...
Yes, I think just to clarify, the 12 million is a sort of is what we're looking at the moment. If the impact on the Combined Authority's budget in its entirety sort of extends to the remainder of the financial year. What is unknown, however, is that if during the process of the financial year, we then find bus companies coming back to us and saying we cannot run X, Y, and Z routes commercially anymore, then we'll have some difficult decisions to take regarding whether we have to increase subsidy to retain those bus routes or not. And that's the real risk that we're facing with the short-term funding that is coming from government into bus, being direct to bus operators. As soon as that tap is turned off, then they will come to the Combined Authority if they can't run a profitable operation. And we really don't have a handle on that risk at this financially at this stage, because it's a situation that hasn't presented itself just yet, but it's the one which we're most concerned about.
So obviously a plea from the Combined Authority there for more funding for the bus operations, as there have been in other regions with trams and networks, for example, and also to make sure that there's full accountability for that money that's being passported directly to the operators, and we need to have that. So I just want to move back before we close this item to Councillor Galton was indicating about the economic side of this. So moving off transport now back to the economics, and then I'll bring Brian Archer back in to close this item. Councillor Galton.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I raised this before at our meeting when we were looking at the COVID-19 economic resilience and what we were doing to support businesses, and we noted that there wasn't much about agribusiness. And given that, it's one of those sectors which, like tourism, is very much seasonally responsive and dependent on the weather. It's not something that we can actually put into the long grass, if you'll excuse the allusion. And I have an agribusiness locally who has been on Look North and has pointed out their problems about how their seasonal produce at the moment is being, well, one of them, they do forced rhubarb, and Councillor Jeffries will know this is an issue for the Wakefield region as well as where I represent. They've had to dump a lot of it because it wasn't being taken on by suppliers, and also they're getting forward towards strawberry production, and each of these sectors is another part of their business model and their potential future resilience to give us food next year. So I would like to see a little bit more around our food supply resilience as a local economy being recognised by the Combined Authority. I know that it has been mentioned before, and that we are supposedly talking to the NFU, and also, of course, we're talking to partners in the North Yorkshire Combined Authority areas, where agriculture forms a greater part of their economy. But at the moment, the only response we've got in terms of the major issue around labour, because it's the labour to get those crops in, which is the major issue for most of our food suppliers, is the Pick for Britain campaign, which seems to be a web-based response, which is completely elective. And when I went onto it, because it depends on farmers finding out about it and then registering on the system, instead of people actually going out to farmers and saying, what do you need from us? There's very little on it. And when I was talking to our officers in Leeds City Council, they assumed that there was no demand for labour because they had not been informed that there were farmers feeling the pressure. And that was on the same day as the farmer in my area was on Look North telling people it's crucial that we get the labour into this area of industry. And I would like to see something a little bit more proactive potentially, and because we are devolved, we can choose to do what we like in terms of our response. And I think it would be really useful if we did actually do something a little bit more proactive for our agribusinesses, who are just as susceptible as those in the tourism sector.
Councillor Gotton, so when we're fully devolved, when we have the Merrill Combined Authority next year, we'll have even more power and funding to do what we like, as you say. I'm not sure we can do just exactly what we like at the moment, but
might be a little bit too late then.
We're getting there, we're getting there. So just on those points from Councillor Galton, Brian Archer, would you like to come back on that? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think sourcing labour and fruit pickers is a big challenge, and I think that's, you know, I think one of the things that we could look to do to move that forward is to speak to the larger businesses who are making people redundant and look to support some of the redeployment of those redundant workers, even on an interim basis, to support, you know, the agricultural sector using the employment hub. Councillor Blake also mentioned the cultural sector and the importance of the creative industries. This week we've launched a grant programme to support the cultural sector with grant support from between £2,500 to up to £25,000 just to support them through the current crisis.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to bring this item to a close now, if that's okay, because obviously there's a few very meaty items on the agenda to get through as well. I just want to look now if I can refer you to the recommendations on this paper, which are the Combined Authority notes progress on the delivery and development of products and services in response to the COVID-19 crisis. And the Combined Authority considers a position with regards to the impact of COVID-19 on the bus industry and organisation. So both those elements are hugely important. People have already said today, Brian and team, that the work you're doing is invaluable in supporting businesses of all types, and we've heard them all today: agriculture, you know, culture. We've got buses, we've got care homes, all sorts of businesses out there are struggling. So as much support you can provide, the better. And we also need to make representations to government to make sure that we have the funding to be able to provide that really vital resource so that businesses can survive this very difficult time. So with that, I just ask that people can indicate in the screen that their assent to those two recommendations. I think that is carried. Thank you very much. So moving on now to devolution. We referred just latterly in that last paper about devolution. We are in the process, obviously I can just say we're delighted to be at this stage, because we've talked about devolution at these meetings ever since I've been a member of this committee, and it is great to be at a stage when we're now about to consult, and before, as Councillor Swift before, and as about to consult on a devolution deal in public. And this is something that is going through all the different local authorities at the moment. In Bradford, we started our consultation paper through yesterday through executive. I believe Calderdale and Wakefield have done the same, and Leeds and Kirklees are today. As I can see nods there. No, there's a shaking of head there. Sorry, Councillor Blake.
We did ours on Tuesday.
Oh, you did yours on Tuesday. There you go. Time moves fast, doesn't it? This meeting, therefore, is to look at devolution in the round and to set off the consultation from a wider point of view. Ben Still, where's Ben? Oh, there he is. Ben, would you like to present this item?
Thank you, Chair. I think as you've introduced, following the devolution deal that was announced as part of the budget in March, the Combined Authority and the local authorities commissioned a review, and the purpose of that review is to determine whether the arrangements for a mayoral combined authority would lead to more effective local government and lead to the benefit of local communities. So that review was commissioned in March, and what we're bringing back here today is that review document for your consideration, and it does indeed conclude or recommend that the move to a combined authority, a mayoral combined authority, does meet those two tests. It does that on the basis of the functions that were agreed in the March devolution deal, and they're set out on page 34 of the paper, and then page 43 comes to the conclusions around why the proposed arrangements would be better than our current arrangements, based on issues such as the ability to secure long-term funding, the flexibility in that funding, the greater levels of accountability, the unified voice and the alignment of decision making that is possible under the mayoral combined authority arrangements. So that's the paper that you're being asked as combined authority members to consider whether you would agree to that being approved or not. If so, and partly in readiness for that, we've also provided the scheme, which was also commissioned in March, and the scheme is in effect the instructions to government for what the legal order that would create the mayoral combined authority would contain. And as the chair has said, a key part in that we would also be seeking your agreement to trigger today is the launch of a public consultation. And there's been a lot of work put into how we would do an effective consultation during this period of pandemic and associated lockdown, and the details of that are set out in the paper. So that's what we're looking for members to consider and conclude today, Chair.
Thank you, Ben. And can I say thank you, first of all, to the officers of the Combined Authority who have worked tirelessly on this and supported us very ably during the negotiations, which were long, complex, however fruitful in the end, in achieving what is actually, I believe, the best deal in the country at £38 million a year for the next 30 years. Is that correct, Ben? That
is correct, among other elements, yes.
So does Alan want to go through the sort of key benefits of the devolution deal that we've managed to negotiate?
Yeah, very happy to, Chair. So there was a report brought back to the last CA where we outlined the contents of the deal. The government has committed, subject to the region agreeing a mayoral combined authority, to allocate, as you just referred to, £38 million a year for 30 years of gain share, which would be unring-fenced for the region to spend on priorities. You also secured, as part of the deal, the largest allocation, both in cash and per head, for the Transforming Cities Fund, which is £317 million over the next few years. Access to a government fund for investment in transport from 2022, worth £4.2 billion, which is only accessible to regions with mayors. Similarly, access to a £400 million brownfield fund to support housing developments, £25 million to support the development of British Library North in Leeds, and a range of other powers and functions relating to transport, such as bus franchising, greater control over the bus system, skills, so control over the adult education budget, which is worth £63 million a year, some functions relating to housing and planning, which can support the region's ambitions around the climate emergency, and the plan will now be to lay all of that out for the public and seek their views on the proposals.
Thank you very much, Alan. So I'm not sure if any of the leaders want to come in on this item. I know we've all talked about Councillor Blake.
We did have a discussion at our executive board about the communication plan. I understand it's been put through the paper, but I'm sure there might be, as we go along, some local flexibilities that we need to bring in so we can make sure that we reach the highest number of people that we possibly can. You know, obviously we're living through extraordinary circumstances, and we really do need to make sure that we get the biggest possible exposure to the benefits of the proposals and the ability for public and other interested parties to be able to comment.
Absolutely, and we all recognise the challenges of consulting at this time. But I believe, Ben, we're thinking through how we best do that. I think you said before that actually a lot of the mayoral combined authorities that have gone before us have also consulted online, regardless of the fact that it was normal times then. But Ben, can you just take that challenge and make sure, you know, just talk us through what we're thinking of doing from a consultation point of view?
Yes, well, I'll give an overview, and then Alan might want to come in with any points of detail. But in essence, how the consultation operates during this period is indeed a really critical issue. In answer to Councillor Blake's question or point, the consultation will be operated through each local authority, so it will have that local feel, and that will allow local consultation teams within each authority to determine how to achieve the best kind of penetration into communities and the best response rates. So that's one key part. The next part is that we are doing the kind of promulgation through the digital channels, but we are also using polling experts to in effect undertake a more focused mail shot survey and digital survey into communities as well, to try and ensure that again we get that representative opportunity for people to comment. Alan might say a little bit more about that. And the other thing I think it's important to mention is that consultation has been a theme at all of the local authority sessions that have been considering this. Some really sensible points have been made, and we are adapting the questions in the light of some of those points made.
Thank you. Alan, did you want to come in there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Clearly, as has been said, during this period, direct face-to-face consultation isn't possible. So we're pulling out all the stops to ensure that there's as much engagement as we can possibly get, and that everybody's given the opportunity to have their say. In other places that have done this, most of the engagement has been online. So there is an online survey which will be the primary source. But as Ben said, we're also putting in place arrangements for people who can't get access online, and we are targeting through mail shots people in particular postcodes where there are higher levels of disadvantage, to ensure that they have an opportunity to have their say. The consultation itself, we're working with a well-renowned company and the Consultation Institute, who are quality assuring what we're doing and providing some assurance that we're making it as accessible as we possibly can. And we will be doing a range of email shots, etc., out to all our stakeholders and partners to try and get them to reach out to wider communities to get as many responses as we can, and we'll continue to enhance the approaches that we're taking as we go through it. But we've got a strong plan to engage as many people as possible, which takes into account the fact that we can't do face-to-face consultation at the moment.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Pennington and then Councillor Hall.
Yep, thank you. Just quickly on the consultation, I do have some suggestions which I'll email through to Ben to save time now. But just for clarity, Alan, did you say 4.2 billion for transport? And if so, over what period?
That's it. So, sorry, Chair, is it okay if I respond? Yep.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. So it's a £4.2 billion fund nationally that we would expect to get a share of. It starts in 2022 and runs till 2027. So it's
Right.
a 5-year period, and the idea is that we develop a business case with government during 2021 to unlock the funding.
Right, thank you for that. And just briefly again, did you say that the 63 million for the adult education, did you say it's per year
Yes.
Yes.
for the 30 years?
No, it's just so the new gain share money is £30 million a year for 30 years.
£38 million a year.
Sorry, £38 million a year.
You're trying to shortchange me now, Alan.
No, indeed. That was hard won. The £38 million a year for 30 years is the unring-fenced gain share. The adult education budget is currently £63 million a year, but is subject to future decisions at spending reviews. But that's what it is currently.
Thank you.
There's a whole long, complicated formula for how it's worked out nationally, John, and hopefully we'll get more money into it in the future. But it's a good start. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear about the efforts that are made to get this consultation right, particularly the fact that it will be delivered through the local councils, because I think people tend to trust what comes through to them and think it's important if it comes from the council, whereas they might not if it comes from anybody else. If they've never heard of the person it comes from, they're unlikely to respond. Because it is important that we know what people think about this. Fundamentally, this is a very good deal for our county, particularly as you've heard the financial benefits of it. A very, very good deal from that point of view. We may have concerns or about some of the detail in there. I'm sure they'll come out, but that's the purpose of the consultation. But it's important we get it right. I'm probably not the only politician who felt a slight twinge at the mention of polling experts, but I'm sure that was only a passing reference on that one. But yeah, thank you. And particularly, can we say thank you to the people that on our side and on the ministry side that have actually put the effort into negotiating on our behalf to get this deal through, because it has taken a lot of effort, I know, from the people that have done it, and we ought to say thank you to them.
Absolutely, thank you, Councillor Hall. I must have missed the reference to polling experts. I've got quite a lot going on here, so we're not sure why that came in. I've got Councillor Galton.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just carrying on from Councillor Blake's points about how we were discussing how the consultation will work. I actually have to say the way that the consultation was set out in the papers that we had from the Combined Authority was actually very clear, and I think it will be accessible for people who actually get to know about it. I think the key is getting them to know about it and allowing people to see the facts of what's proposed before they see what some people might put forward in terms of being mischievous. So there's a lot in the word deal, which basically to some people says stitch up. Do you see what I mean? And we need to make sure that this isn't just seen as an agreement between a set of suits in London and a set of suits in town halls in West Yorkshire, and that it actually has something meaningful to offer the people of our sub-region that we represent. And part of that might be explaining that actually, as leaders, we wanted to have a Yorkshire deal. And unfortunately, those in charge in Westminster weren't listening at the time. And actually, this is what we've got. And this is what we're going to take forward, because what's most important is getting resources in the hands of people who are locally represented and locally accountable to get change happening at pace, which hasn't happened before because too many decisions are taken in Westminster. And if that message can be taken on board through our consultation process, that's great. Unfortunately, what happens in a lot of consultation processes is we concentrate on the detail and the technicalities that make something happen, as opposed to what the promise is of those changes that we're making.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Galton. Certainly Yorkshire is still alive and well because we have a meeting later this week on Yorkshire, and we have some money as part of the devolution deal to support our Yorkshire ambition. Just to say, the other word that I think is very off-putting for people is devolution. If you speak to any resident about devolution, they will glaze over because it just sounds quite technical in itself. So it's quite a challenge to make it sound interesting, but I usually say it's about powers and money. And to do more things locally that people want. I've got Councillor Shabir Pandor indicating, I've got Roger Marsh indicating, so I'll do that in that order. Councillor Pandor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll try and be quick. Firstly, I completely echo what a few of my colleagues have said in terms of the amount of effort that's gone in from local authorities, from the Combined Authority, and from ministers, and the amount of energy that's actually gone into actually making sure that the deal is actually one of the best deals that's been developed for a long time. And I use the word deal deliberately based on the previous comments. I'm sure Councillor Gorton meant well, but it is the best deal right here that has happened for many, many years. And the reason why I say that is it's about time that we actually got here, because the people who have actually missed out are our communities in all the 5 local authorities, and this is about equalising and making sure that we get our fair share. There's still a long way to go, but this is a remarkable achievement. And in terms of the deal, Leeds City region is the last of the core city areas that actually got the deal on the table. We should have had this done many months ago. So it is a good deal. The deal is there to actually serve the communities of West Yorkshire, and we shouldn't be ashamed of saying that. But we need to make sure that we actually get the positive messages out. It's not something that's been done on the back of a fact packet, in smoke-filled rooms. It's something that's actually been done professionally with integrity, and we'll make sure that that integrity continues in terms of how we consult with our communities. Alan has also mentioned how we're going to go that step further in terms of making sure that we just don't do everything digitally, how other combined authorities went ahead. So, I welcome the report, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Shabir. And I just absolutely endorse your comments about making sure that every part of the region feels the benefit of this devolution deal, and that those powers and funding go to improve their lives. That's exactly what we're all about as leaders, and it's just wonderful to have got to this stage. Roger Marsh, who is the chair of the Leeds City Region elect. Roger, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I guess three points I'd like to make. First of all, to reinforce what others have said about we've waited a long time for this. Some of us on this call remember 2015 when we had a near miss. So for our communities and businesses, it's a great step forward. And I'd like to also pay tribute to all those officers that have worked long and hard to get us to this point. I think secondly, it's also would be useful to all of our communities to understand this is the beginning of the devolution journey, not the end of it, in terms of the further stages that will emerge. And I think to bring that alive to the point that Councillor Galton made, perhaps we might want to give some sense of the impact we aspire for our businesses, our communities, our quality of life, etc., to reinforce some of those things that strategically we focused on over the last 5 years of the Local Growth Fund and West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund, to bring it so people get a sense of actually what's on offer, not what the minutiae is, as people have said, because actually it'll be a turn off. And with great respect, I hope that every facet of West Yorkshire would see the opportunities for further enrichment of all of the aspects that we all strive to. So as I said, for me, it's perhaps painting some of the pictures of the positive that this will deliver, rather than perhaps people who may have set their face against the idea of this sort of governance structure, perhaps historically so.
Thank you. It's a good point, actually, Roger Marsh, about making sure that people see the benefits of this. If we start talking about minutiae and what is in 3.2 and what scrutiny committees there are all the time, then actually we're not going to be able to tell people exactly what the opportunity is there? So we've got to be very careful how we frame our language. So I'm not seeing anybody else indicating. I'm just going to bring Ben back in and then move to recommendations. Ben?
Thank you, Chair. I think the aside from going through the recommendations, the The key element for us is to share with you the consultation documents in their final form. The version that's in your pack was the current form as of a week ago, and we are updating it in the light of comments being received and looking to improve it. And so we would look to share that information amongst members of the Combined Authority as quickly as we can.
Thank you very much. And I think the message is loud and strong, but the consultation needs to be thorough. We want a good number of people applying to it and making their views heard. And we need to make sure that we are very clearly articulating the benefits of devolution and not putting people off by talking about too much minutiae of detail, which will turn them off. We want them to be excited by the proposition and the opportunity. Moving to recommendations, I won't read them all out because they are obviously quite long and detailed, but they're laid out there in number 9 there. Just say I would like to recommend those in number 9. Can I just see people in favour of those? Please show your hand. Thank you very much. That is carried. So we look forward to seeing comprehensive consultation going forward. And does it come back here towards the end of the year, Ben, I believe, or is it?
Yes, it'll come back before the summer, or over the course of the summer, with the responses to the consultation for the Combined Authority to consider.
Thank you very much. So I now have, just on my agenda, I have walking and cycling infrastructure. Am I right? I'm just navigating my papers there. Local cycling and walking infrastructure plans. And Alan Rees is going to introduce this item, I believe, and then I'll bring in politicians.
I think Councillor Groves was going to introduce it.
All right, sorry, Councillor Groves.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Groves, can you please introduce this item, and then we'll bring in officers accordingly. Thank you. Councillor Groves, you're on mute.
Thank you. Right, okay.
That's lovely, thank you.
Good, thank you. So these plans see a strategic approach to developing a network of high quality walking and cycling routes across West Yorkshire. It's a hope that the development of the list whips and accompanying improvements in infrastructure will encourage more people to choose active travel. I can't emphasise enough how important active travel is going to be in terms of the recovery in COVID as part of the transport network. And the government have reflected that in the recent announcement of the 250 million emergency funding. Districts are getting on developing schemes. Unfortunately, the funding hasn't reached local government at this point, and we have no indication when that funding will come down. So in terms of the list whips, these were overseen by the Transport Committee and have gone out to consultation, working with district partners. And we're hoping that the list whips will actually enable more people to walk and cycle for shorter everyday journeys, helping meet the Yorkshire West Transport strategy for 2040. I think we really need to sort of capture and hopefully harness the change that people have made to their lives, sadly, through this COVID situation. But the benefit is that more people are cycling. I believe it's really difficult to get hold of cycles at the moment, and walking. And I think it's how we continue to encourage that going forward. In the document, you will see the maps for each district that have been, again, developed with the Transport Committee, portfolio holders, and the Transport Committee did endorse this draft on the 20th, in January 2020. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Kim. Which officer did you want to bring in officers, or is it just a matter of questions?
Yes. No, so Ambrose is now going to come in.
Ambrose White, do you want to take yourself off mute and off and put your picture on if that's possible?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ambrose White, a policy officer with the Combined Authority. Hopefully you can hear and see me okay. As Councillor Groves said, the local cycling walking infrastructure plan work is a piece of strategic development work that has been underway for a while at the moment, and it's a piece of work that was prompted by government cycling walking investment strategy, and government published technical methodology advising local authorities how to plan for cycling and walking in the most robust evidence-led way. And West Yorkshire Combined Authority is one of around 40 authorities in the country taking part in a pilot test of the methodology, and we secured government support to do so. We're developing a LSWIP or LCWIP for each partner council. That acronym is rather difficult to say. So we wanted to develop one for each partner council area, but these could be combined to form a West Yorkshire plan. And we've been working with each partner council to do so from the start. So your officers have been involved in the development of these alongside our own consultants. We adopted a phased approach, and the phase one acted as a pilot essentially to test the methodology, and we selected specific geographic areas within each district area, which is why as you'll see in the appendices, the plans show cycle routes and walking improvements in specific areas within each district area. The next phase of work will look to expand this to cover West Yorkshire, based on the learning we've learnt in phase one. We did undertake stakeholder engagement. We haven't done a public consultation, but it was an engagement exercise in 2 phases to inform the plans in line with the guidance from government. And after we did stakeholder engagement in autumn 2019, we updated the plans and took them to Transport Committee, who endorsed them at their meeting in January. So the summary documents are attached as appendices and recommended for approval by Combined Authority. There's also a recommendation to delegate the final look and appearance of the documents to the Chair of Transport Committee, suitable for publication. I could talk at length, but I won't, so perhaps I'll finish there.
Thank you very much. Certainly, I was wondering how to say the LCWIP acronym. It's a new acronym that is just crossing our desk, isn't it? So we'll have to get used to that one. I believe there's some money pending from government as well, 250 million, is that right? Nationally?
Yes.
So, do you want me to come in again, Councillor Groves?
Well, Councillor Groves, do you want to just come in on that?
Yeah, there was a call with officers to the DFT yesterday, but we still haven't got any clarification about when that fund is going to reach local government, or how it's going to be divided, or what mechanism they're going to give to us to actually implement that throughout the districts. So we're unclear. It's really unhelpful, if I can say, Councillor Hinchcliffe, because we have got district officers who have got some really good ideas and schemes ready to go, but we just can't get on with it.
Okay, thank you very much. So today we're going to pass the plans and endorse the plans, but we need the money to deliver them, and that's the message to government. You've put 250 million on the table. Tell us how much we're getting and when we're getting it. Councillor Pennington is indicating. Councillor Pennington,
just a quick one to Ambrose. I think it's marvellous. I think it's an excellent job. I think you've got some good schemes there. If you've got a lot of money coming in, please don't forget Queensbury Tunnel. There's a massive opportunity there.
Thank you, Councillor Pennington, and here, can I say. So obviously, separately, we're obviously been talking to government a lot about Queensbury Tunnel. We actually put it in all our papers about the devolution and tried to make sure that government have realised the importance of it. Of course they do, and we've had in Bradford, we've had reassurance from ministers that they realise the significance of Queensbury Tunnel, and that is a very significant piece of infrastructure for us in Bradford. And this scheme obviously enables a lot more walking and cycling to go on across the whole of West Yorkshire, and therefore is something that we fully want to endorse. Is there any more on this? No, I don't think so. So I'm going to go to recommendations. So we have 2 recommendations there: that we adopt phase 1 of local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, produced for the 5 local authorities there. And a decision on the second one is final appearance of phase 1 documents is delegated to the Combined Authorities Managing Director in consultation with Councillor Kim Groves, who is the chair of the Transport Committee. So I'm Councillor Blake's a little bit previous there, putting a hand up. Can I see all those in favour, please show? Thank you very much. And that is carried, thank you. So moving now to the next item on the agenda, which I believe is a corporate item. Just scroll down to it. Scrolling. There we go. Right. So yes, so corporate matters, 2 things on here. We've got corporate capital strategy, which we went through at our corporate audit and governance meeting last week, I believe it was, and also procurement strategy. I'm very pleased to see that social value is very much part of this procurement strategy. Angela Taylor, where has she gone? Oh, there. Angela, would you like to just present this item for us, please? Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you say, we've got 2 updated strategies for approval today. The capital strategy was originally, we had a version approved last April. As the Chair explained, it did go to governance and audit last week, who were happy to endorse it, subject to it undergoing a bit of a review ahead of next year, recognising that the capital strategy is about the sort of overarching framework we have in which we sort of frame our capital decisions. It's not about the detailed process that's set out elsewhere. But there was a recognition at the meeting last week that the landscape is moving quickly, and with a combination of COVID and the devolution opportunities, we may well wish to revise that capital strategy. So we'll be bringing that back ahead of its renewal date next year. It is something we do need to update each year. It is a requirement of our Prudential Code. So it would be helpful to be able to approve this version today and recognise that we need to be looking at this again over the course of the next few months into next year. The procurement strategy, we have a current 3-year strategy that you approved in 2018. This one sets out some of the progress made since then. We've put a lot of effort into reviewing our procurement processes, seeing how we can bring the benefits of good procurement to the organisations to get better outcomes and better value for money. The social value element has been embedded in this new strategy, and it gives a bit of a roadmap to the areas that we're looking to continue to improve, focusing on the category management, stakeholder management, and contract management as we go forward. Again, it is an evolving picture, but it does give us some a clear focus on how we're going to bring more expertise into the team, how we're going to apply that and make better procurement decisions for the organisation and for the region. I will pause at that.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, the corporate audit and governance last week were very clear that given the times we're in and the financial uncertainties in the economy and therefore in our budgets, we need to be sighted on capital strategy and other financial elements going forward, because obviously we've got to be fleet of foot, I'm afraid, and flexible to make sure that we can respond to events as they happen. Roger Marsh, I've seen you indicating. Would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Angela. And my remark, I hope, is to be helpful rather than appear critical. Businesses routinely stop me in the street and comment to me that actually, as an organisation, we're quite hard to do business with. Now, I wondered to what extent you felt there was some improvements we could make, and whether this paper does seek to embody those improvements on the one hand. On the other hand, I do explain to business colleagues that it's not, as the world I used to enjoy, as simple, because obviously it's accountability for public money and we need to go through due process, etc. And often the response is yes, we get that. It's about the speed at which things are dealt with and the what appears to be a rather tortuous bureaucracy that they have to go through to get decisions. And it's of concern to me, not, as I say, by way of criticism, but thinking about
devolution and scaling up of funds to make sure that we're able to involve and take all of our private sector community to enrich the impact I referred to in the earlier piece, Chair. So it's a question backed up by some observation, but perhaps maybe something we could come back to as a combined authority, just to check in and test in the circumstances we are best in class, albeit in the prevailing environment that we're operating in.
Thank you, Roger. So I think it's a good point, and I think we've all remarked that in recent weeks, as local authorities and as a combined authority, we've all flexed and changed rapidly, and why can't we do that kind of fleet of foot activity on a regular basis? So I'll bring in Angela, but I'll also bring in Brian Archer on this as well.
Yeah, if I can just do a quick response there. I think public sector procurement is always one of those areas that causes some tensions. I think you're right. However, I think we'd be very, very alert to that. And some of the changes in here and some of the changes we've also made to our contract standing orders, which are a sort of sister document to this, have been about trying to streamline processes. It's been about getting a purchasing pipeline in place, because the earlier we know about the things we want to do, the easier we can advise, warm up the market. We've been doing more supplier engagement days. We've been trying to reach out to the market, but we need to know that those procurements are coming up. So there's been quite a process of building on information from within the organisation, so that it doesn't become a we need to buy in X next week, because to do a good procurement, we need to lay the groundwork, and that's what the team have been about. Some of the work around category management is about getting their expertise in certain sectors, so that there is the team is able to respond very quickly to some of the more regular types of purchase that we make, and have frameworks in place, have other ways set up that they can quickly call off and get work progressed. So I think it will always be a continual improvement, but I think we have done a lot to try and make sure we're learning from others as well. There's a lot of the stakeholder management strand in there is very much about working with our local authority partners, YPO, and some of the other purchasing arrangements in place across the region. So take it on board. I suspect we'll never be perfect, but we'll continue to try and improve that. And I think certainly it's better than it was in the past.
I think certainly how you do procurement is making sure that you give people lots and lots of notice, businesses lots of notice when a contract is coming up for renewal. So if we could give them as much notice as possible, then they can prepare for it and have a good chance locally of getting that contract. Brian Archer.
Yeah, Angela's absolutely right. We're taking a more strategic approach to procurement. We want quality and we want speed, and we want to be easier to do business with. And there's 3 areas of focus which are partly picked up by the transformation programme. That's about better people, more training for the people, better processes, and better technology, which hopefully will speed up that procurement process and make it much easier to do business with the combined authority.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm not seeing anybody else indicating. So with that, there's 2 recommendations that we adopt the capital strategy and the procurement strategy, both of which are in your papers. So I'm happy to recommend that. Can I see those in favour, please show? Thank you very much. That is carried. So I think the only other item on this agenda is the meetings at the end of the agenda. So you have item 9, which is calendar of meetings. I'm not sure there's anything we really need to say about this. This is all the calendar dates provided. Just shows the breadth of work that goes on at the Combined Authority when you go through this. So we're approving the calendar of meetings and noting the provisional dates of meetings for the LET board, which obviously is in the jurisdiction of Roger Marsh there. Has anybody got any questions or comments? Councillor Pennington.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just a quick one. I noticed that Roger's having an away day. Why aren't we all invited?
You're not on the LEP, are you, John? I don't think.
Well, we're all always up for a party, I'm quite sure.
It could be ticket only, John. So apply early, but the procurement's very difficult.
Where are you going? Where are you going?
Tenerife, I think.
The LEP obviously is a membership body, and all 5 West Yorkshire leaders are on the local enterprise partnership, along with a lot of businesses, which in the body is constituted by government, so we have to follow the guidelines of government on that. I'm guessing that the LEP away day won't be away, and it won't be a day, which is what usually happens when I go to an away day. So it'll be online, and we'll all try and have great pictures behind us, as you do today, Councillor Pennington, to make it sound a little bit more exotic than it actually will be, but all useful to get together and make sure we plan the future, which obviously is going to be challenging for everybody, but with opportunity through the devolution deal. So with that question, I'm not seeing anybody else indicating, so I'm happy to accept the recommendation of calendar of meetings. Please show. Thank you very much. That is carried. So I believe that concludes the meeting for today. Ruth, have I missed anything?
No, that's it.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attendance today,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Have a good rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.